So we're going to talk today about data visualizations. And please, if anyone has a question, raise your hand or message us with a question, or let us know you have a comment, and we'll get that answered. Also, I'll also have some contact information at the end of the call. So welcome, everybody. We'll get right into it. Thanks, Julie, for facilitating this today. So just real quick, who we are, Pinnacle Health Informatics. We're entering our third decade. It's kind of hard to believe we've been doing data and analytics for that long, of assisting with data and technology and behavioral health. We do a lot of data warehousing, data integration, all types of data visualization, workflow, productivity, and technology issues around those. Every day we're into the reporting tools and the dashboards, and we're always available for any questions or assistance. So hopefully this information will be interesting and you can take it back to your agency and utilize it. If you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer those as well. So I kind of like to kick things off. I mean, I know I've shown this graphic before, but visualization is really important. It's getting more important because of the just sheer quantity of data that we are collecting in every aspect, financial, health, every aspect of life. And really humans aren't very good at digesting rows and rows of data. And I always have liked this graphic from a couple of hundred years ago, I think, maybe 1869. So maybe not quite a couple hundred, but over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And it's simply a graph that a man did in 1869 about the War of 1812 with Napoleon. And the size of the graph, the size of the thickness of the line represents the size of Napoleon's army. So it starts out on the left, very wide, with 422,000 men. And he marches to Moscow and comes back with only 10,000. So we could look at that in a chart, and in a rows of text, but it really wouldn't mean as much if we didn't see it graphically. And so visualization really helps us understand, right? Helps us understand and make decisions. So we wanted to talk just a little bit about selecting tools, right, for visualization. And we get this question a lot. Now, everybody's sort of focused on the next big thing, right? There's many, many vendors out there, and they've all got the great tool that's going to get you the data that's going to take you to the next level. And that's great. And we like those and we work with those. But really, visualization is not really as much about how pretty it looks as it is about the structure and the administrative controls and the process that goes into the design of the visualization, right? So everybody wants to jump in and start dragging values around, but really the most successful projects are the ones where everyone sits down and kind of talks about what they want to accomplish and what the measure of success is. And then really it's less important what tool you choose because you have a process in place with administrative controls and administrative buy-in and participation. So we're going to look at some tools, but again, always keep in mind, you can spend a lot on a visualization tool or a process, but unless you have the process to go with it, it doesn't really get you where you want to go usually. Some common tools that are out there, everyone's talking about PowerBI, but there's many that are similar, ClickView and Tableau is huge. And, those are kind of those modern, drag and drop, really nice, HTML5 and interfaces and just a lot of interactivity and color and those are great. SQL Reporting Services is one that we work a lot in, and that's very popular. And they continue to update that, and it looks great. And you can do some really great looking things with it. Crystal Reports is another one, and there's a lot of other similar reporting tools that are very mature that have been around for many, many years, and maybe not quite as interesting as the newest, greatest stuff, but still millions of reports written in SQL Reporting Services and Crystal, and people are doing great things with the data that they visualize in those tools. Again, if they have a great process behind it, then those work great. And then, of course, Microsoft Excel. It's probably the world's most popular business intelligence tool, just because it's so ubiquitous and it has been around for so long. So many people know how to use it, and it's rich in tooling for business intelligence. And again, we have clients that we've worked with that use that exclusively, and they do great with it, right? And they made it work, and it's more about the process behind it than it is about the tool. And all of these can be used for dashboarding and reporting, and even Excel, you can make it look just like a dashboard. You can lock everything down and make it look really pretty, and put in graphs and charts and everything. So it really, the tool again, the tool again is less important than the process behind it. So Power BI is one that we do look at, and similar type products. Power BI and some of the similar offerings, they're heavily cloud focused. Power BI is heavily cloud focused. And so, if you're really making a big push to the cloud, it's where a lot of people want to go. Now, there's a lot of moving parts to get everything to work in the cloud. And of course, a lot of especially healthcare agencies are nervous about, moving all of their data to the cloud. Now, I get that it's very secure, and it's probably as secure in the cloud, but lately Microsoft, for one, they were hacked recently, and the hackers got access to even the source code of Microsoft. So, it's a big juicy target if your data is all in the Microsoft cloud, and it's just something you have to mitigate and manage, but it's also something you have to just be aware of. And it has given pause to some behavioral health and medical agencies that have kind of balked a little bit at moving heavily to the cloud. But it is in the cloud, and there are big advantages of that. And Microsoft and Tableau and ClickView, they're all very focused on that. And some of the new tooling that supports the cloud products are very nice. And it's a very nice offering. Power BI, they're very focused on an expression language called DAX, and it's not, I mistyped that, it's data analytics expressions, not data expression language, as well as MDX, which is their legacy multi-dimensional expression language. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, right? I mean, if you just buy it and you have to now have everybody or your team learn some new languages, that can be a challenge. There's a lot of interest around these kind of tools. They tend to be kind of pricey. I mean, if you look at the Microsoft offering, if you ramp up and have a lot of kit capacity, it can be very expensive. But again, if your data if it's what you live and die by, and you're getting a lot of value out of it, then it will be worth it in some situations. But the cost can be substantial. Visually, they're very modern looking. Again, I mentioned the cloud tools. You have to kind of spin up a whole cloud-based focus, and the data movement is different in the cloud and requires some reorientation. Power BI, currently they do have an on-premise offering as well for those agencies that are a little nervous about putting everything in the cloud. It doesn't have all the whistles and bells, but you can run Power BI on-premise. The other thing that's interesting about Power BI and some of these similar tools, Microsoft doesn't really support Power BI as a developer tool yet. It's kind of interesting. It doesn't have all of the version controlling and all of the kind of traditional developer structure around it. It's more of kind of an end user tool, right? They kind of see it as more of a kind of a graphical version of Excel, if you will. So Power BI is great. It's a departure from the way things have been done a little bit, and it can be expensive. And there are certain things you need to consider about the cloud focus. So, and that's a great tool. That's a great tool and a good offering, and similar tools. They're all very impressive. There's dozens of them out there. There's Google now has a new one that they've purchased, and they're all very nice. So just as an example, I think we've shown this on a previous webinar. This is just, we work with Power BI a lot, and we have clients that do as well. We've done COVID dashboards, lots of fun interactive things that you can drill into and get good data for. This is just an example of one. So it looks really nice. Maybe that's a little blurry. But you can do lots of interaction and lots of really nice work in Power BI. This is a Power BI cheat sheet that I downloaded. We'll make it available. We'll put it on. If anybody wants a copy of this, we'll send this out with the recording. There's a lot of this kind of information out there because there's a lot of interest in Power BI. And so there's no lack of podcasts and YouTube videos and people building cheat sheets like this to try to help you get up to speed. You can download the tool for free from Microsoft and get started. There's a free just desktop version you can connect to some data sources with and get going on it. So lots of really good information out there, and you can kind of start playing around with Power BI. When I say the desktop is free, the desktop tool is free. To get the full service that they offer, it starts and goes up to depending on the capacity that you need. So that's Power BI, and there's a lot of really nice things you can do there. There's lots of custom visuals you can get, and in the sake of time, I may at the end show the Power BI interface, and we could look at. Let's see, maybe you can see that here now. So here's the Power BI interface, and you have all these visuals here that you can utilize, but there's also a marketplace for visuals, and you can buy visuals. A lot of them are free for a limited amount of data or a limited amount of use, and they have all kinds of different nice things that you can insert into your chart. They look great. And they're very useful, and they're very understandable. Again, if you don't have a process in place to utilize those, then it may not yield you very much. So, all right. So onto SQL Reporting Services. So one nice thing about SQL Reporting Services and some of the other similar types, like your Crystal reports and some of those others, is they're very mature platforms. And so there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of information. They're proven, they're tried and true. People have been running, the biggest companies in the world run these, and there's a deep user base. Microsoft and I know SAP is still very committed to these tools like Crystal and SQL Reporting Services. They have updated looks and feels. We'll look at a couple examples here. So they look really nice. They don't look old or dated. At SQL Reporting Services kind of offers, it's kind of a pixel perfect design. So it almost offers kind of a word processor design capability to your reports, positioning things on a page, and lots of drill down capability, lots of drill through capability, powerful scripting engine underneath. And the real compelling feature about SQL Reporting Services is it's included in your SQL licensing. And so if you're running SQL anywhere, Microsoft SQL, you get it for free, right? It's just free. So, I've had several instances where companies wanted to go full bore into a bigger package like Tableau or, Click or Power BI, and it was just cost prohibitive where they had SQL Reporting Services already, and they could do anything they wanted with it, right? It looked great, it was colorful, and it just didn't make any sense to spend all that money. Now, not that they won't move to the Power BI at a later date, but many companies are just deciding to stick with it because it's being updated, and it's a great tool, very mature. Same with Crystal. You're still seeing a lot of support and a lot of interest in Crystal reports. Another nice thing about SQL Reporting Services is it's a development tool, Visual Studio, full GitHub, team services integration, versioning. Very, very mature in that regard. And so it's still very one of the developer tools is considered by Microsoft. And for Microsoft, they've kind of switched the name to paginated reports. I'm not sure why they did that, but it's still, a lot of agencies and organizations just still stick with it just because of it's very efficient. The cost is very reasonable for that. So again, if there's any questions, please, or any comments, please let me know. So here's just some examples, reports that look great, have been very effective, built in SQL reporting services, use lots of data sources, run on very scalably, several hundred to several thousand users, lots of information. This is a dashboard here that it was very carefully designed, and the result was sort of all put in place that we wanted to achieve before anything was built. And it's just very effective. It runs every day, and it's really boosted this agency productivity. Here's another example, nice looking dashboard built in SQL Reporting Services. Looks great, looks modern. Again, fulfills its purpose and does a very able job at that. Let's see. Okay, let's go on to another one if there's no questions or comments. So Microsoft Excel, right? So people sometimes don't think of Microsoft Excel as a business intelligence tool, but it's probably the world's #1 tool when you think of all the activities that occur in the business intelligence space and how many people are using Excel to get, to do all kinds of things. I mean, it's got a huge user base. I mean, I don't know if there's a bigger user base for any software in the world. Extremely mature, very, very rich tool set, extremely versatile. Includes the Power Query, which is the engine in PowerBI, the Vertipack in-memory engine. You can connect to most any data source you'd ever want to connect to. OLAP, you can code in DAX. I mean, it's very, very powerful. You can create dashboards, reports, visualizations. We regularly do training on Excel, and we show people how to, lock a dashboard down, take out the grids. You can lock it down and send it to people, or post it online, or post it on a intranet or something, and it looks just like a dashboard, right? And we have companies that built 40 or 50, dashboards on in workbooks in a single Excel file, and hook it up to a data warehouse and walk into a board meeting and hit refresh, and they run their whole company off this set of dashboards out of Excel. So again, it doesn't really matter as much the tool they're using. They could rebuild it all in SQL, or rebuild it in Tableau, or rebuild it in Power BI. It's the process, and they manage from the data, right? They're data driven. And so, Excel is still a huge player, rich third-party support, tons of tools that integrate. And really, it's on every desktop, right? Almost. And, if you need to find somebody that knows Excel, it's a lot easier than finding people that are conversant in these other tools. So Microsoft Excel is still a great tool to use. May not have all the buzz that the other tools get, but it's still fantastic. All right. And so this is an example. This is an example of just a dashboard that we've done in Excel. And you can see it doesn't even look like Excel, right? You can put all kinds of titles and slicers and and lock it down, and so people can't move things around if they get a copy. And it looks great. And again, if it's being used to make decisions, then it really doesn't matter what tool you use. It's about the process. Okay. So, how to choose? We get that question a lot. And I always say, well, no tool is going to make you productive, or make your people productive, or make decisions for you, right? I always say start with a less expensive proof of concept. Let's start with 1 or 2 data sources, and come up with a couple of dashboards and build them in a less expensive format. Build them in Excel. build them in Crystal, build them in a tool you have that you don't have to buy or pay extra for. And then if that gets going, and if you feel like that's useful and down the road, then you can ramp up. You can always ramp up, but I always hate to see people spend a lot of money on tools and then not use them, or it's overwhelming. The other thing that I think is really important, and this isn't as much about choosing, but become conversant in how to build visualizations. Practice visualizations all the time. Every day if you can. Make sure that you have administrative pieces in place. Do you have a process for productivity? Do you know how you're going to measure productivity? What are your goals? What's your benchmark? Those are the important things. How are you going to indicate, exceptions? And any of these tools will do that. Any tool like Excel, you can do all that stuff. And so there's really no need to go crazy at the beginning, or to go overboard at the beginning, when you can, do some initial stuff in some other tools that would make the entry into it a little bit easier. Scale up when it makes sense, right? That's good advice. Now, if you got the staff and the resources and everybody's going to have a lot of time, then go for a big package and implement it. Let's see. So I did want to touch a little bit on dashboard design, because visuals are not always equal, right? I mean, the way we perceive things as human beings it's been very well studied, and it's been very closely examined. And so part of this process is, let's design something that is very usable and very effective, and that we can get going. And I wanted to show you just a few examples of what I use on a daily basis to help me. So there's an individual out there his name is Stephen Few, and he's sort of seen as one of the experts on data visualizations. And I get all his books, and I'm going to show you some of his books. And these aren't books you can breeze through. I have to read. I try to read a chapter or two every day and just cycle through these books, right? Because every day I'm like, wow, I missed that. I missed that concept the last time I designed a visual, and I'm going to do that today. And it's just practicing every day to try and get better. And the first book I would recommend is his Information Dashboard Design book. It's available on Amazon. It's not available on Kindle. He won't release his books on Kindle because he likes you holding a big book and he can control how you see the things that he's presenting. So that's this book. This is the current edition, Information Dashboard Design, displaying data for at-a-glance monitoring. So you can see here that he's all about information that's understandable and easy to use. And you can kind of see the dashboard that I looked at a few minutes ago. I had a bullet chart in it. Well, yeah, that's where I got the idea. Use a lot of bullet charts, use a lot of spark lines, indicate things with color, hue, intensity, things like that. Another great book is his one on his simple visualization techniques for quantitative analysis, called Now You See It. And it talks about human perception and how people how they see things, and how our brain integrates and understands information. That's another great one. Show Me the Numbers, Designing Tables and Graphs to Enlighten. That's another excellent one. And again, these are all big, thick books, very colorful. And you can't really read at one time. You got to read it all the time. Read it, just keep reading and rereading it and implementing the techniques. All right, let's see. So what we like to do is, and we'll make this available, we'll send a copy of this out with the recording, is this is our report and dashboard specification sheet. So we like to use it. We're always trying to push it. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just take specs over the phone or something. But in best cases, we like to have a document that kind of helps guide the process before we start building any visuals. And you can see here, It's just all about who's it for. Please describe a narrative. What's the tool? Is it going to be in Power BI, SSRS? What are we measuring? What are the time elements? What are the colors? What's it going to do? Let's get together and talk about it. And one thing at the bottom of this chart of this document that I don't show is it's like, if you would like, I say at the bottom here, if you'd like, just sketch it out on a piece of paper. Just sketch out with a piece of paper and a pencil what you want your dashboard to look like. And a lot of times people are like, what? That's kind of silly, but it's helpful because I don't always see what somebody else, or that you may, if you're building the report, you may not see what other people see or have that picture in your mind. And so by them drawing it, it's like, oh, okay, I see better what you're getting at here. So that is a nice way to start a project. So getting back to Stephen Few, he had I don't know if he has these contests anymore. He has a website. It's Perceptual Edge. I can send that link out as well. Assignment completion, just real dry stuff, right? And he had a whole bunch of respondents, and the winner was this. And I think he used, this might be in Tableau, I'm not sure. You could do this really in anything, in Power BI, SSRS. It looks great. You can see here immediately, current grade, target grade, previous year, right, in this first column. So it's very easy to kind of see who the top performers are, who didn't perform as well as they did last year. If you have to go through this and churn through all that data, it's not going to be very productive. But in a dashboard like this, you can see the data. Last 5 years standardized math assessments. You can see who's up, who's down, using a spark line. Last 5 assignments, using another variation of a spark line, with the most recent in a darker color, right? He's using that hue of the color to indicate the last period. Days tardy, days absent, assignments completed late. You can kind of see using kind of a line graph. Anyway, just a really nice job that this individual did on this chart. But again, it doesn't really matter what the tool was. It was the process that they went through to build that. Really, really nice. And if you get a good design, then any tool will help you monitor, find exceptions, and identify opportunities in your data. So again, that's from his perceptualedge.com site. So really quickly to wrap up, I show this in some of our webinars once in a while. This is kind of an interesting chart from the Data Warehousing Institute. It's kind of a maturity model and the 6 stages of getting value from your data, and the barriers that exist. And they use sort of this prenatal to sage, which sounds, may sound kind of funny, but his idea is that we kind of all start out excited, and we start getting BI packages, and everyone starts working with them, and he calls that a spread mart, which is just data's everywhere and everyone's playing around with data, and you kind of hit a gulf here because it's hard to get to that next level, which is kind of a data mart, kind of somebody that's willing to get the data into kind of certifiable or sort of standardized little packages, so that not everybody's getting different results, right? If you get somebody in accounting gets one number, and somebody in billing gets another number, and somebody in clinical gets another number, because everyone's looking at the data different, has different rules. So you kind of have to get over that first gulf, but then you kind of hit a peak, and if you can kind of get to that next level, then the next level is kind of a real data warehouse, true, lots of data sources, lots of cleaning of the data. Everybody's agreeing as to what the data means. We're all sourcing it from our one source of truth. And then that sometimes is the end, right? There's another chasm there, because the next level is much more of a philosophical one, where you're actually using the data to get to, competitive advantage, right? You're really using the data to make your business run better, and you're a data-driven organization. And so, however you do that, that's an interesting way to look at it, right? The way we progress through. And visualization is a huge part. The more and better visualizations that you can have and that you can build, the better I think the adoption will be, and the more that they'll get used. So with that, just wanted to wrap up. Just wanted to kind of give that as some information that's been useful to us over the years, and hopefully you can use that in your events or your projects. Are there any questions?